deep in the hills of Arkansas, an army of extremists plot to overturn the U.S. government. They spread a doctrine of hate, murder, and genocide. Launch death raids on churches and synagogues, bomb public utilities, and gun down a state trooper. Federal agents must dismantle the radical renegades without inciting a bloody war.
In 1984, a tragic murder led agents into the frightening world of domestic terrorism. Law enforcement vowed to dismantle the violent faction that claimed responsibility. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The radical group pursued a doctrine of racial cleansing, an attack on basic American freedoms. The FBI's quest for justice escalated into a brutal showdown, pitting agents against terrorists, fueled by hate.
June 1984, Sevier County, Arkansas, a rural area along the Oklahoma border. Winona Bryant drives south on U.S. Highway 71. Winona is a teacher at a local high school. She's traveling with her children and her nephew to meet her husband for lunch. He is Lewis Bryant, an Arkansas state trooper. He patrols this stretch of highway. Along the way, Winona spots a police cruiser on the side of the road. She recognizes the ID number.
That's Dad's car.
Lewis is nowhere in sight. Something's wrong. Winona tells the children to stay in the car.
Stay in the car.
Then she sees him, covered with blood.
Lewis? 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 Oh my God, Lewis! Oh God!
Winona struggles to stay calm as she uses the police radio to call for help.
Officer down! Officer down! Please, somebody! Officer down! Somebody!
She tells the dispatcher that Lewis is unconscious. It looks like he's been shot.
Just get somebody here! He's been shot! Please!
The Arkansas State Police dispatcher alerts all police frequencies that an officer is down.
Interstate 71 North. 2 miles north.
Passing motorists stop to help.
Officer down. Officer down.
Winona can feel a faint heartbeat, but her husband isn't breathing. She administers CPR until county authorities arrive. Paramedics rush Bryant to a nearby hospital, where he is pronounced dead. Trooper Lewis Bryant was a respected veteran of the Arkansas State Police. He leaves behind his wife, Winona, and their 2 children. Within minutes of the shooting, the DeQueen, Arkansas Sheriff's Department receives a frantic call. A driver on Highway 71 reports seeing a brown and white van leaving the scene. It was pulling a homemade trailer. Police in Broken Bow, Oklahoma spot the van heading west. The driver refuses to stop, but police force him to the side of the road. As officers converge on the van, the driver pulls out a rifle and starts shooting. Police strike the suspect in the shoulder. He pulls out a .45 caliber pistol and continues firing. Officers hit him 4 more times, finally forcing him down.
See your hands! Hold over on your belly.
Police search the wounded suspect and find a driver's license identifying him as Richard Wayne Snell of Stephenville, Texas. At a nearby hospital, police question Snell. The suspect confesses to shooting the state trooper. Snell tells police he has outstanding warrants in Texas and he was trying to escape arrest. As Bryant approached the car, Snell opened fire.
Yeah, what went on in Oklahoma?
Agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation search Snell's van. They discover a metal box containing a .22 semi-automatic pistol and a grenade.
He's that slow to you? Tell me something I don't know. Get a shot of that.
They also find suspicious wires attached to the underside of the steering wheel column, leading to the air conditioner vent.
We got wires going into the
They fear the van is booby-trapped. Investigators call in a bomb squad from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Technicians carefully examine the vehicle. After several tense moments, they conclude the van is not rigged to explode. The search of the vehicle resumes. Investigators find several more weapons, including a MAC-10 machine pistol. They also find literature printed by a group of white supremacists called the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
You're labeling them all the same. So that
The group advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government. In their literature, they call for the murder of government agents and the extermination of Jews and blacks. Police call in Agent Bill Buford of the ATF. Along with other federal investigators, Buford has been trying to establish a criminal case against the CSA for nearly 2 years. Looking for evidence, Buford makes a chilling discovery.
In the van was a briefcase. And in the briefcase was a lot of notes that this individual had put together, different maps. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was a map, apparently, of my house. The street it was on, the different houses that surrounded my place. And that caused me a little consternation, to say the least. It was later established that they had also been doing surveillance on a federal judge, the U.S. attorney, an FBI agent. For whatever reason, whether they just wanted to know where we lived or whether they were anticipating retaliation for some whatever, that's just left up to one's own imagination, I guess.
Buford examines the weapons retrieved from the van.
One of the things that came to my attention almost immediately was that the MAC-10 had a silencer on it.
The silencer is homemade but sophisticated.
marks. These are homemade
Bill
marks.
Buford believes he has seen one just like it, confiscated just 3 months earlier.
To match his two.
In early April, Missouri police caught 3 men stealing a flatbed trailer. In their possession were 3 .45 semi-automatic pistols, 1 sawed-off shotgun, and 1 MAC-10 converted to fully automatic with a homemade silencer. According to an informant, all 3 men are members of the CSA.
The 2 silencers looked exactly the same. And I felt like this might be a break if we could determine that these 2 silencers were made by the same people and were able to establish that they had come from the CSA compound.
5 days after the shooting, on July 5th, 1984, Trooper Lewis Bryant is laid to rest. The funeral is attended by then Governor Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and over 1,000 police officers. Governor Clinton makes the investigation of extremist groups a priority.
Is to set up a group comprising members of both districts under the chairmanship of Colonel Goodwin to work on these cases.
State and federal agents probe deeper into Snell's connection to the CSA. The murder weapon in the Bryant case was a .45 caliber Colt Commander. 18 months earlier, the gun had been stolen in a deadly pawn shop holdup in Texarkana, Arkansas. The owner had been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Ballistics analysis shows a bullet recovered from the victim had been fired by a .22 caliber Ruger, the same .22 Ruger found in Snell's van. According to records, the leader of the CSA purchased that Ruger 4 years earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Agents now have enough evidence to subpoena the leader of the CSA to appear before a federal grand jury on gun charges. Bill Buford heads to Mountain Home, Arkansas to deliver the subpoena to the CSA leader at his 200-acre compound. Informants and surveillance indicate that the compound is heavily fortified. Several structures dot the surveillance photos. Agents know the compound is inhabited by the CSA leadership and approximately 65 men, women, and children. They know little else.
Sentries out, about in front of it, stop us, do our checking.
ATF investigators had become aware of the CSA several years earlier. The organization had evolved from a religious group into a violent right-wing militia.
When ATF began to really think that this was more than just a Bible study group was when we were aware of the large number of right-wing organizations that were coming in and doing the paramilitary training there.
About another 150 yards up.
According to informants, extremist groups such as the Aryan Nation, the Posse Comitatus, and the Order frequently visited the compound.
They're watching us tight, so...
A few low-level members of the CSA had been arrested for firearms violations. But the leadership of the group had always managed to evade prosecution for all but misdemeanor offenses. Buford hoped today would mark the beginning of the end for this dangerous organization. Agent Buford meets a man at the front gate who identifies himself as Kerry Noble, the group's second in command.
He went into the compound, and a short time later he came back and said, well, the leader of the group will meet with you, but only you, and you have to go down unarmed, and I have to search you to make sure you haven't got a gun on you.
Buford agrees to turn his weapon over to another ATF agent. He allows himself to be searched. He knows that going into the compound alone and unarmed is dangerous, but there's no other choice.
If one of the people that was working for me or one of the agents under my supervision had wanted to do it, I wouldn't have let him do it. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing.
The stakes are too high. The group is too dangerous. Buford needs to show the CSA that federal agents will not be intimidated. In Arkansas, State Trooper Lewis Bryant is gunned down during a routine traffic stop. Investigators discover weapons connecting Bryant's killer to a group of violent white supremacists calling themselves the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
Oh, we got a grenade.
Got another hand.
ATF agent Bill Buford enters the group's heavily fortified compound to deliver a subpoena, ordering the group's leader to appear before a federal grand jury. The ATF agent enters alone and unarmed.
It was kind of an awesome sight. At first glance, it looked like just a community there with a number of buildings. But as you looked closer, you saw that these buildings were all rock structures, very well made. If you looked closely, you could see that there were bunkers dug around the compound itself.
Buford confronts the CSA leader face to face.
I got a subpoena in my jacket.
I explained to him that I had a subpoena from a federal grand jury in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that he would need to appear on the date on the subpoena.
The subpoena concerns weapons involved in the murder of a state trooper. Investigators have traced some of the weapons back to the CSA.
No, I'm not under arrest.
He asked if he would be arrested. I assured him that a grand jury appearance was all this was. That was not an arrest warrant, that he wouldn't be arrested.
The leader takes the subpoena.
Okay.
His men escort Buford out of the compound. When the CSA leader eventually appears before the grand jury, he denies knowing Richard Wayne Snell, the man who confessed to the murder of Trooper Lewis Bryant. He also claims no knowledge of how weapons traced to him ended up in Snell's possession. On November 1st, 1984, Richard Wayne Snell is found guilty of capital murder in the shooting death of State Trooper Lewis Bryant. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the same day, Snell is charged with the murder of a pawn shop owner in Texarkana, Arkansas. In the winter of 1985, the FBI, the ATF, and the Arkansas U.S. Attorney's Office turn up the heat on the CSA. FBI Special Agent Jack Knox has developed a key informant who claims the CSA is involved in acts of domestic terrorism.
He outlined what he referred to as road trips, in which he and 2 other members of the CSA were assigned by the leader of the CSA to take in search of businesses or establishments to plunder, or Jewish establishments which they might attack.
According to the informant, 2 years before the murder of the Arkansas State Trooper, several CSA members had set fire to a Jewish community center in Bloomington, Indiana. The informant claimed that at about the same time, the CSA firebombed a church in Springfield, Missouri that welcomed gay members. He also claimed that 3 months later, the CSA attempted to bomb a major natural gas pipeline in Fulton, Arkansas, to disrupt supplies across the Midwest. were unsuccessful. The pipeline was not damaged. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve Snyder could see a dangerous pattern emerging.
There were what appeared to be random acts of violence. But after this individual talked, they no longer became random acts of violence. They became part of a plan to strike out against the United States and attempt to disrupt the activities of the United States and its citizens.
The CSA had evolved from a religious cult into a group of domestic terrorists that had declared war on the United States. In March 1985, a second informant, a former member of the CSA, provides more information about the organization. He gives details about firearms and explosives being manufactured and used by the group. He tells investigators there is a machine shop in the compound where the CSA makes grenades and silencers and illegally converts semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic. He also claims the group has obtained a powerful anti-tank rocket, commonly called a law. The FBI informant reports that the CSA is building an armored tank and that landmines have been placed around the perimeter of the compound. He also provides a laundry list of interstate offenses committed by the group, including transportation of stolen vehicles, mail fraud, and theft of government property. Based on the informant's statements, the U.S. Attorney pursues a warrant to search the CSA compound for illegal weapons and explosives. Assistant U.S. Attorney Snyder intends to use RICO, a federal racketeering statute, to prosecute the CSA. The statute enables authorities to arrest and convict leaders of criminal organizations based on a pattern of illegal activities.
The RICO statute carried a statutory maximum penalty of 20 years, as opposed to the weapons and firearms violations, which carried a lesser penalty. So it was a more severe crime.
If I can show you this bigger map, maybe
Investigators discuss how to best serve the warrant.
Again, this is the compound.
Bill Buford opposes a kick-in-the-door approach.
It was obvious to me that we were dealing with a very militant organization. They were not, in fact, going to just roll over. If we walked in and say, hey, we're the federal government, we're here to look at your compound, they weren't going to allow us to do that.
To reduce the risk of a violent battle, the FBI would employ the newly formed hostage rescue team to serve the warrants. The HRT was established in 1982 as a counter-terrorism unit to work both inside and outside the borders of the United States. In 1985, Special Agent Danny Colson is the commander of the HRT.
The HRT basically are assaulters. It's their job to go into a crisis point and neutralize terrorists and rescue hostages. But this was not that type of situation. These people were very well armed, they were very formidable, and we wanted to avoid a shootout.
Colson establishes a command post in nearby Branson, Missouri. The HRT is composed of 2 elite teams.
Basically, you had a sniper element and you had an operator element. The snipers were responsible for gathering intelligence to give cover to the operators, and the bulk of the team was made up of operators.
Agent Buford, who has been inside the compound, briefs Colson on the layout, the main gravel access road, the front gate, and where the property borders the shore of a man-made lake.
Now, this gate's gonna be very heavily
The first phase of the operation is a reconnaissance mission.
You cannot command and control a crisis situation unless the commander's done a recon. He has to go in and see the ground. He has to know what the structures are like, where they are relative to each other, and what the best avenue of approach to get there in the shortest period of time is.
Tonight, Colson and his team will be the uninvited guests of the CSA. In Arkansas, local and federal authorities believe an extremist group is involved in domestic terrorism. They call themselves the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The FBI's hostage rescue team prepares to enter the terrorists' heavily fortified compound.
Where the compound is or anything else? Last chance.
HRT Commander Danny Colson briefs the reconnaissance team before they go in. The recon team's job is to gather intelligence on the group's infrastructure, its buildings, manpower, and weapons, while avoiding the CSA's armed patrols. ATF agent Bill Buford will act as the HRT's guide. He's been inside the compound and knows the layout.
I had been doing so much work on the CSA and had spent so much time in the woods out around the compound that I had a good idea of the terrain, the fortifications on the compound, and had drawn up a raid plan myself as to what I felt should be done in order to execute this safely.
FBI Special Agent Danny Colson knows the CSA is well armed and dangerous.
These individuals had assault rifles, they had night vision capability, they had an excellent communication system, they were well trained, they practiced their tradecraft, which means marksmanship.
Still, Colson has every faith in his team.
The HRT has excellent patrolling skills, and it was just a matter of relying on our training. You move very quietly, you move very slowly, you crawl on your stomach, you stop and you listen, you look, and you rely on your senses. We would send a person on point. He would scour the area and glass it with the thermal imaging gear. You listen to the noise of the forest. If something interrupts that, you know that somebody's there that's not supposed to be.
The team spots CSA guards patrolling the compound. They're armed with assault rifles.
We finally signaled it was safe, and we moved the rest of the patrol in. And we sort of leapfrogged in and out, and we had a rear guard to be sure that nobody came around behind us. The thing that was concerned most about, of course, is the law rocket. You don't have to be a real good shot with a law rocket to kill a lot of people. It'll take out a light tank or a bunker, fired into my perimeter, could have killed my agents.
The recon team finally makes its way to the main compound. CSA members, as well as their families, are asleep inside some of the buildings.
The assault team leader needed to know what the structures looked like in case we had to breach them. So you have the possibility that there could be a suicide pact with these people. And they might start killing their children. That's happened before, it's happened since then. And so we had to be prepared to go in there to rush in and save innocent lives.
From the reconnaissance missions, Colson now knows exactly how the CSA compound is laid out and what needs to be done.
Well, the thing that the recon really reinforced was that we don't want to assault these guys. I mean, if we had to, we could do it, but there would be great loss of life on their side and possible on our side.
The compound sits on over 200 acres of land. If Colson hopes to resolve this without bloodshed, he'll need a lot more men.
After we saw how expansive this facility was there, I knew that 50 men could not hold that perimeter.
Colson calls for an additional 200 FBI agents from field offices across the country. He needs to sneak them into the small community without tipping off the CSA. Knowing Mountain Home, Arkansas is famous for its sports fishing, FBI agents disguise themselves as fishermen. They check into fishing camps located along the river. The plan is to use fishing boats to approach the compound at its weakest point, from the lake. As agents prepare to move on the compound, Colson briefs Special Agent Clint Van Zandt of the FBI's hostage negotiation unit.
You've got about 5 options in any type of situation. You can contain, isolate, and negotiate. You can contain and demand surrender. You can use snipers, you can use tear gas, or you can use a direct tactical assault and just overwhelm them with manpower and firepower. In these last 3, people die.
The decision is made to contain, isolate, and negotiate. Danny Colson is the point man on all 3 phases of the operation.
This man views himself.
I came to believe rather quickly that the leader of CSA is not going to want to negotiate with a lower-ranking FBI negotiator. He's going to want to talk to his tactical equivalent. In this case, it's going to be Danny Colson.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I'm a tactical person. I had been a sniper, and I'd been a SWAT team member and a SWAT team leader and trained as an operator. And I was not trained to be a negotiator. And I didn't know that I could pull that off. I'm much more comfortable going in after the guy than trying to talk him out.
But Van Zandt convinces Colson that he's the right man for the job.
I had viewed a lot of negotiations. I mean, every time a tactical team is deployed, a negotiator is deployed with them, so I'd seen it done. And basically, Clint Van Zandt taught me some negotiation strategies and techniques.
After 10 days of reconnaissance and planning, Special Agent Danny Colson and the FBI hostage rescue team are ready. Over 200 law enforcement agents prepare to surround one of the most dangerous and heavily armed outlaw militias in the country. In 1985, the FBI closes in on the CSA, a paramilitary organization in Arkansas. Members of the group are suspected of domestic terrorism and murder. Over 200 agents, led by the FBI's hostage rescue team, make their move. HRT snipers and operatives deploy across a lake that borders the compound. Their mission is to establish a rear perimeter. Additional HRT units fan out in the woods, flanking the main compound. The ATF, along with the Arkansas State Police and the Missouri Highway Patrol, set up roadblocks. Their job is to prevent any CSA supporters from entering or leaving the compound. Overhead, an FBI surveillance aircraft called the Night Stalker cruises at an altitude of 50,000 feet. The plane's onboard thermal imaging system monitors movement throughout the compound. FBI Special Agent Danny Colson.
You could see everything going on the ground. We saw CSA people standing and talking to each other in little groups around the compound. We could see every animal, every deer, every coyote, rabbits running around on the ground, which gave me a tremendous advantage because I could use this vehicle, this airplane, to help me set my perimeter. They could maneuver my people around listening posts. They could maneuver my people around patrols.
Colson directs the mission from a command and control vehicle near the front gate of the compound. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt, an FBI hostage negotiator, advises Colson.
It was very prudent to go in at night and to have them wake up the next morning and find that we had walked literally right up to them without them knowing it. We could have come all the way in, but we didn't do it because we want to resolve this peacefully.
HRT snipers surveil the compound from positions inside and near the main gate. Within 10 minutes, they report that 2 men are exiting the compound and approaching their position.
Sniper 1 to command post. Roger. Instruction, please. Have individuals coming out of the compound gate. Stand by.
Standing by for instruction.
And I radioed back and said, do they know you're there? He said, no, they haven't seen us yet.
The sniper tells Colson that one man has an assault rifle, the other has a sidearm.
Individuals getting closer, command post, instructions please.
Colson instructs his men to confront the CSA guards.
I said, you hail them, you yell at them and tell them you're the FBI and tell them to go back inside.
You copy. Tell them to get back inside the compound.
The message it sends is that we could have got you, but we chose not to do it. Basically, we are here in force, but we come in peace.
FBI! Back in the compound, now! FBI, get back in the compound! Move! Move!
I wanted them to get in the habit of following my orders or the orders of my team and to show them that we weren't there to hurt them.
We're hearing from the tactical agents that there are lights, that there are activities within the compound.
We'll go with you.
No, you better stay back here.
Moments later, another man walks out of the compound.
Who's out here?
I instructed them to let him get close, and I wanted 2 operators to take him into custody.
FBI, freeze! Don't move! Freeze!
I didn't order him back in because I wanted to start the dialogue. It's time to talk now. Sometimes one of the most difficult things about a standoff situation is finding somebody to talk to. You don't always get them to talk to you initially.
The man identifies himself. He's Kerry Noble, the deputy commander of the CSA.
The first thing I said to him is we need to start a dialogue and talk about resolving this thing peacefully. We're not here to hurt anybody. But you're not getting out. And if you start a war, we're going to end it.
Noble says he will convey the FBI's request to talk with his commander. At daybreak, federal agents and local police have completely surrounded the compound. The news media somehow gets hold of the story and converges along access roads. Agents establish a direct telephone line into the compound. A short time later, Agent Colson receives a call.
The operator called me over and said, it's him. And it was the leader.
Yellow. That's right, I'm in charge of it.
And essentially said the same thing that I'd said to his deputy, is that this is the FBI, my name is Danny Colson, we have a warrant for your arrest.
And the only way it's going to happen...
The leader agrees to come out and talk on one condition:
Hold on a second.
that he will not be arrested. Otherwise, his people will put up a fight.
Okay.
Colson agrees to the terms.
5 minutes. I'll see you then.
Van Zandt prepares Colson for the meeting. As an expert in behavioral science, Van Zandt believes the CSA leader will only respond to another commander.
As a military commander, I said, you wouldn't be carrying a long gun or rifle in this type of meeting, but you'd have your 9mm pistols. You'll meet his expectation as to what our FBI tactical commander should look like. He'll be more open to dialogue, more open to negotiations.
Colson approaches the main gate.
You should always look like you're in charge. But also, you have to bring him out. You have to get him to talk. It's not just you walk up and give demands, you get him to talk to you.
Tensions mount for a possible violent confrontation. FBI snipers train their sights on the CSA leader and his guards.
And you have to understand that this is a man who thought we were literally from the devil, that we were agents of the devil. So trying to create a bond of trust on a road with 2 armies facing each other with awesome firepower is a difficult thing to do.
Colson tells the CSA leader that the FBI is there to confiscate grenades, assault rifles, the law, anti-tank rocket, all illegal weapons stored in the compound.
And eventually...
I really didn't describe the forces. I just said, we're here, we've been here, we know what's going on in there, and at this point, I wanted to remain the faceless enemy. What I got from him was dialogue, which is the most important thing. But what I didn't get was capitulation. He didn't agree to do anything. He just agreed that they would go back in and pray about it.
Well, I respect that.
We'd agreed earlier if he came out that he could go back in. And that's very important. You have to keep that trust.
Colson and Van Zandt have no choice but to honor their agreement. They allow the leader to go back inside the compound. The first day and night of the siege passes without incident or resolution. On day 2 of the siege, the CSA commander requests another meeting. This time, he appears in full battle dress.
Changing clothing is a big deal. When the leader of CSA puts on tactical clothes, he's taking the presence of a tactical commander.
The leader of the CSA tells Colson that there are people inside the compound who are prepared to launch an assault and break out.
My patience was wearing really thin at this time. And I said to him, who are you going to fight? You've not seen us. You don't know where we are. We are going to use deadly force on you if you come out with weapons and come onto my perimeter. Who are you going to shoot? You haven't even seen us yet. How are you going to shoot us? It's like you're fighting ghosts, and you won't even know who kills you. You need to come out of there.
Now you get in there and convince them to get out of here right now.
The leader tells Colson he is prepared to come out, but he can't control everyone in the compound.
And he said to me, I need help. He said, there's a man that's our spiritual leader, and I need his advice, and I need his help to convince people that's the thing to do to come out. And I said, who is this? He said, it's Robert Millar.
Robert Millar is a well-known figure in the secretive world of right-wing extremists. It's an unusual demand. But to Van Zandt, it's a turning point in the negotiation.
This situation was either going to be resolved by bullets or it was going to be resolved by trust. Bullets or trust, what's it going to be?
For Colson, it is the moment of truth. He knows that if the shooting starts, there is no telling when it will stop. In the mountains of Arkansas, over 200 law enforcement agents surround an armed compound. Inside are a group of violent right-wing extremists, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The leader of the CSA demands to see Robert Millar, their spiritual leader. FBI Special Agent Danny Colson decides to use Millar to help persuade CSA members to leave the compound.
This is something totally against FBI policy, to bring in a Confederate into a crisis situation, not just to negotiate, but to go inside. And this is a huge risk. And I thought it was worth taking, given the risk that we were facing.
The FBI flies Millar in from Oklahoma. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt tries to convince Millar that it will be in the group's best interests if he helps bring the standoff to an end.
I said, you know, if you're able to do this, if you're able to resolve this peacefully, you'll be known as the peacemaker within your movement. I said, I don't say that to win you over. I say to tell you that you've got a lot riding on this. And you can see the wheels turning. It was at that moment I thought, he's flipped over on our side. He's on our side. He's going to do it. This was all the chips. We're saying, we're going to bet on this guy that he's going to drive home the message that Danny and myself and everybody else has been delivering for the last 4 days. Now, he's got to close the deal.
What a mess out here it looks like.
And he called on the field phone. And Millar said, well, I'm in here talking to them, but I really haven't got anything resolved. They said, okay, you got another hour. Well, really, we couldn't control him. What were we going to do, go in and grab him by the neck and rip him out of that compound where there was 50 people with guns inside? So you had to be real careful of not, you will be out of there, because then it would have been apparent we were an empty suit. We were a paper tiger, and we couldn't be perceived as that. So it had to be, well, I really need you out of there in an hour. And he called back in an hour, and he said, I need more time with these folks. I think I can do it. I've got them coming along, but I need more time. And we just reconciled ourselves that he's going to stay there the night.
On the morning of April 22nd, day 4 of the siege, Millar and the CSA leadership exit the compound. For the first time since the beginning of the standoff, there are no armed men with the CSA leader.
They came out and they said, we have an agreement that we will surrender. We will come out and we'll give up our arms and walk out peacefully.
Colson receives the news with guarded optimism.
And I said to them, that's a great decision, but I want you to understand that this better not be a ruse for an escape attempt, because you will not survive it. This better be a surrender.
Colson gives the leader 15 minutes to gather his people and bring them out.
And very shortly after, I get a communication from a sniper team that they're coming. They're coming out. The snipers report that they're in civilian attire. There's no camis, there's no battle gear, there's no weapons they can see.
The siege is over. Not a single shot has been fired.
It was an ending that we had all prayed for, and one that we were very fortunate that we had.
ATF and FBI agents carefully searched the compound, accompanied by the deputy commander of the CSA, Kerry Noble. Over the course of several days, they recover hundreds of automatic weapons, homemade hand grenades, and landmines, as well as detonator boxes and plastic explosives. Agents find a Law anti-tank rocket near the leader's house. They find 30 gallons of cyanide stored inside steel drums. Agents believe the CSA intended to use it to pollute municipal water supplies. Investigators also find a steel-plated armored car equipped with a fully automatic machine gun. At trial, the leader of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord is sentenced to 20 years in prison for federal RICO violations. Kerry Noble, the CSA's deputy commander, receives a 5-year sentence for firearm violations. Today, he speaks publicly about the dangers of hate groups and destructive cults. Richard Wayne Snell, already serving a life sentence for the murder of Arkansas State Trooper Lewis Bryant, is found guilty of murdering a pawn shop owner. He is sentenced to death. On April 19, 1995, at 9:16 p.m., Snell is executed by lethal injection. Today, the CSA compound is little more than a collection of abandoned shacks and stone ruins. When a young woman vanished, family and friends discovered her secret life. The political appointee carried on an illicit affair with a wealthy, married man. Investigators suspected that her ex-lover was responsible, but they had little physical evidence to support their theory. In order to bring him to justice, the FBI would have to go undercover and turn brother against brother.
Power is a responsibility, as well as a privilege. But in the wrong hands, power can corrupt. This is especially true in the legal community. For former Deputy Attorney General for the state of Delaware, losing sight of his sworn oath to uphold justice would prove lethal. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. When a prominent attorney tried to put himself above the law, it was up to the FBI to prove that justice is blind.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, June 27, 1996. At the upscale Panorama restaurant, prominent Delaware attorney Thomas Capano, separated from his wife, dined with his mistress Anne Marie Fahey, the appointment secretary to the Delaware governor.
Back next week, we'll be out and look how good we work together.
Despite the candlelight and wine, her mood was grim. Anne Marie told Capano she wanted to end their relationship. Capano was furious with her decision. After dinner, Capano drove Anne Marie to the Wilmington, Delaware house he rented since leaving his wife. He insisted she come inside to continue the conversation. He didn't want their affair to end. Two nights later, Anne Marie failed to show up for a dinner party with her sister Kathleen. Concerned, Kathleen arranged to meet the Delaware State Police at Anne Marie's flat. She explained that no one had heard from the governor's secretary since Thursday. They found unpacked perishable groceries on the kitchen counter. Kathleen called Michael Scanlon, a successful banker and Anne Marie's close friend, to see if he had seen her. He was supposed to pick her up for the dinner party, but Anne Marie never returned his calls.
This is out of character for her?
He has everything always put in its place. I just don't understand.
Anne Marie's family knew her to be neat and orderly, yet her apartment was in disarray. Shoes littered the bedroom floor alongside her purse. An expensive pantsuit remained in its gift box.
This isn't normal.
No, not at all.
A detective searched the purse. He found her wallet and ID, though her keys were missing. Detective Robert Donovan of the Wilmington Police was called to the scene and believed that Anne Marie hadn't left the apartment on her own.
From the information that they're providing, they said she's not the type of person to leave, go walking around the neighborhood, or to go somewhere without letting somebody know where she's at. Number one, typical with a female, when she goes somewhere, she takes her pocketbook, wallet, identification, something.
This is Detective Donovan.
In the bedroom, Kathleen found a packet of letters from a man named Thomas Capano. They professed his love for her. Kathleen and Scanlon were perplexed. Anne Marie had never even mentioned Capano. Though Anne Marie's sister had never heard of the man, Detective Donovan certainly had. Thomas Capano was a powerful man in the state of Delaware.
Tom Capano was extremely connected. He was, at one point, he was number 2 man for the city of Wilmington. He was head legal counsel for the governor for the state. He was very close with a number of state representatives, state senators, extremely close with some retired police chiefs for the city of Wilmington. Very influential.
The detective found Anne Marie's journal in the bedroom and flipped to the last page. The diary entry evidenced her relief at ending her love affair with Capano. It read, "I have finally brought closure to Tom Capano. What a controlling, insecure maniac."
Doesn't look like a happy relationship, though. Not at all.
The officers paid a visit to Thomas Capano at 3:39 a.m. Separated from his wife and the father of 4 daughters, 47-year-old Capano was living in a rented house located only minutes from Anne Marie's apartment. Capano confirmed that he had a relationship with Anne-Marie, but claimed that it was long over. According to him, the couple had parted as friends. He told the detectives that he had dinner with her on Thursday night in Philadelphia. Afterwards, he brought her back to his house briefly to give her a gift and some groceries she needed. Then he took her home. When asked, Capano claimed he had not seen Anne-Marie since, nor was he surprised that she was missing. Capano explained that Anne-Marie had Friday off. Perhaps she had decided to go away for the weekend. He described her as moody and at times suicidal. He suggested the police wait until Monday morning when she would probably show up at work.
We then asked him if she, in fact, was at his house, and if he would have a problem with us looking through his house. He stated that he would have a problem because his children were with him for the weekend and they were upstairs asleep.
On Monday, however, Anne-Marie failed to show up for work. Investigators returned to her apartment building and talked to her downstairs neighbor.
Can you tell me something about what happened last night?
The neighbor had been away over the weekend, but remembered hearing a single set of footsteps in Anne-Marie's apartment on Thursday evening at around 9:45.
Normally we hear high heels.
They seemed heavier than usual, possibly a man's. She heard nothing more after that night. State and local investigators checked Anne-Marie's bank and credit card accounts and found no activity after June 28th. Friends and relatives reported they had not seen or heard from her since that day.
All right, here.
Apparently, Thomas Capano was the last person to have seen Anne-Marie Fahey.
Take him up to the Panorama restaurant in Philadelphia and see if you can find
Investigators
someone
traveled across the Delaware border to Pennsylvania to corroborate Capano's story. They spoke to the waitress who served the couple on June 27th at about 7 p.m. She remembered the evening and recognized Thomas Capano and Anne-Marie Fahey from the photos.
Yeah, that's her. She wasn't really happy.
She wasn't.
The waitress recalled that the pair seemed tense. Anne-Marie said little and hardly touched her food. After she handed the bill to Capano, he passed it to Anne-Marie, who signed his name on the charge slip. The waitress never overheard any of their conversation since the couple stopped talking each time she approached the table. Investigators met with several of Anne-Marie's close friends who described an illicit affair that had begun almost 3 years earlier. In 1993, 27-year-old Anne-Marie Fahey met Thomas Capano in the governor's office.
No, Tom Capano.
Despite her high-profile job, she was impressed by the powerful lawyer and flattered when she caught his eye. Investigators learned that while Capano showered Anne-Marie with expensive gifts, he only romanced her in out-of-the-way places to avoid being seen. She felt a strong attraction to the charismatic older man, but feared her family's disapproval and kept the affair secret.
I'll be waiting for you when you go back.
As months passed, Anne-Marie confided to her friends that Capano's charming exterior belied an angry and manipulative man. He understood love only in terms of control. She told her friends that she couldn't trust him. By the spring of 1996, his manipulation and anger had damaged their relationship beyond repair. Capano told Anne-Marie that he had separated from his wife so they could stop hiding.
I don't even want to talk to you about this. I don't even want to talk to you about this.
Give me more. You know how much I give.
Anne-Marie wanted out. Capano refused to let go. Detectives learned that shortly before Anne-Marie disappeared, she began seeing Michael Scanlon, who she found caring and stable. It was the relationship that she had always hoped for. The prospect of a marriage proposal seemed promising. Thomas Capano continued to pursue her. Anne-Marie told friends that Capano was stalking her. She was scared and wanted him out of her life. Capano refused to accept the rejection.
Well, Tom Capano had never been told no before. He thought that he could control everything in his life and everything in everybody else's life. Finally, somebody, Anne-Marie Fahey, stood up to him and told him, no, I've had enough, and Tom couldn't handle it.
The Fahey family posted a $10,000 reward for information relating to Anne-Marie's disappearance. Over the 4th of July weekend, hundreds of concerned citizens helped police conduct a massive search of the local park where Anne-Marie often jogged. The governor himself joined in the hunt.
Thank you for everybody who knows and loves Anne-Marie.
They found no trace of the missing secretary. The case became a federal investigation since Anne-Marie, a resident of Delaware, was last seen in Pennsylvania. Special Agent Eric Alpert of the FBI's Wilmington field office offered his help.
I contacted Robert Donovan, asked him if we could be of any assistance. He said we could. At that point, we pulled telephone records and credit card records.
With the help of the U.S. Attorney, Alpert secured credit card statements and phone records belonging to Thomas Capano and Anne-Marie Fahey. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly noticed that Capano made a $308 purchase at Wallpaper Warehouse just 2 days after Fahey disappeared.
Thought that was odd because Tom Capano was living in a rental house, so I called the number for Wallpaper Warehouse. The person answered the phone and said air-based carpets. I turned to Bob Donovan right away, and we both had the same reaction, which was, my God, he must have rolled her up in a carpet.
Investigators now believe that Thomas Capano killed Anne-Marie Fahey, but they needed more than a hunch to convince a judge there was probable cause for a warrant to search Capano's house. In July of 1996, agents and local detectives focused on attorney Thomas Capano, who they suspected was responsible for the murder of his former mistress, Anne-Marie Fahey. 2 days after she vanished, Capano had purchased a new carpet. For Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly, it raised suspicions that Capano had concealed Anne-Marie's body in a rug and removed it from his house.
Up until that point, we had probable cause to believe that Tom Capano had played a role in the disappearance of Anne-Marie Fahey. But what we didn't have was probable cause that we'd find evidence in his house.
I really wanted to call you in to ask.
Hoping to establish probable cause in order to obtain a search warrant, investigators learned that Capano's housekeeper had cleaned his home 4 days before Anne-Marie's disappearance. She added that Capano canceled her service the following week, claiming that the house didn't need cleaning since his children hadn't stayed over. The detective quickly noted the inconsistency in Capano's story. On the night he was questioned in his home, the attorney claimed his children were upstairs asleep. 3 weeks later, the housekeeper returned to the residence and noticed something that struck her as odd. The love seat and carpet from the living room were gone. In their place sat 2 chairs and a brand new carpet. This simple observation gave Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly all he needed to move forward.
So when you combined the rug and the couch with Tom Capano's statement that he had brought Anne-Marie to his home on the evening of June 27th, and you combine that with all the other evidence we knew about their tumultuous relationship, we now were armed with probable cause to get a search warrant for his house.
Connolly and FBI agent Eric Alpert prepared an airtight 37-page search warrant for Thomas Capano's Wilmington home, serving it on July 31st, 1996. Detective Robert Donovan didn't know what they'd find, but they knew where to look.
We searched the entire residence, but we took special attention to this room, the great room area, because we believed that Anne-Marie Fahey was murdered in that room.
The team found the 2 chairs and new carpet described by the housekeeper. They moved them to see what might be hidden underneath.
Hey, careful with the furniture. Okay, you don't have to destroy the place.
The floor was clean. On the baseboard nearby, agents found something promising. Barely visible to the untrained eye, they saw 2 brown spots that appeared to be dried blood. Agents retrieved samples by swabbing the area with a mild saline solution. Investigators hoped the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. could provide stronger forensic evidence from the samples. For DNA lab examiner Alan Giusti, testing the recovered material presented a challenge.
The items themselves are not very large. The stains were actually fairly small, and because of that, we have to be careful because our test will consume part of a stain to determine if it's blood.
Giusti performed a Kastle-Meyer test. This test requires only a pinhead-sized specimen. He applied the chemical phenolphthalein, which turns pink when mixed with blood. The test worked. For Agent Eric Alpert and the team, the discovery was important.
This is very significant because at this point we had no murder weapon and had no other physical evidence in the case, so finding blood was very important to us. We needed to find whose blood that was and whether it matched Anne-Marie Fahey's blood.
It was impossible to determine whether the blood belonged to Anne-Marie without DNA samples from her or her parents. Samples from her siblings would be too disparate to provide solid results. Unfortunately, Anne-Marie's parents were deceased. Anne-Marie's brothers and sisters provided investigators with a possible lead. A check of the missing woman's calendar book revealed that she had given blood a month before she disappeared. Agents went to the blood bank to subpoena the sample. It was too late. Her blood had been reduced to plasma and shipped overseas. There was only a slim chance it could be retrieved. Worse yet, DNA-rich red and white blood cells had been removed, and extracting DNA from plasma alone is next to impossible. As the investigation slowly moved forward, Thomas Capano continued to live a life of ease. As the eldest of 4 brothers, he had always been his parents' favorite, and the son who had achieved success in all he sought. Thomas's brothers had always looked up to him. Jerry, the youngest, had been rescued many times by his older brother's legal expertise. Joseph ran the family construction company, while Louis managed the family's considerable real estate holdings. The Capanos were multi-millionaires and seemed impenetrable. Investigators learned early on that Thomas Capano's family and friends were unlikely to cooperate.
We spoke with an awful lot of people that are very influential that just would not believe that Tom Capano was capable of murder. And were mad at us for investigating him. We're mad that we believed he was, in fact, a murderer. That was frustrating because it was tough to get anybody that was cooperative.
The team believed that if Capano killed Anne-Marie, someone close to him probably helped dispose of the body. But no one was talking. With no body, no DNA sample, no murder weapon, and no cooperation from his cohorts, the federal case against Thomas Capano was weak. On August 6th, Agent Alpert received a call from Sean Taylor, a project manager in Louis Capano's development company. Taylor knew something he believed might interest investigators. He agreed to meet agents and detectives in a secure location, fearing what would happen to him if the Capano brothers found out he was talking to authorities. He described an unusual event that occurred the day after Anne Marie was reported missing.
Did they give you any reason why they did that?
He advised us he was a project manager at one of the Louis Capano and Associates construction sites. He stated that he was ordered on July 1st, the Monday after Anne Marie Fahey's disappearance, to have 4 dumpsters on the property pulled and dumped. And he felt that was strange because none of them were full, and it would be very out of character to do that because of the cost of dumping something like that.
This reinforced the investigators' suspicion that Thomas Capano had help disposing of Anne Marie's body.
2 weeks earlier.
Louis Capano's development company was served with a subpoena for the dumpster records, as investigators began to turn up the heat on the powerful Capano family.
Louis, I need to talk to you. Here, go ahead and take these. Get with Bob.
They hoped one of the brothers would turn against Thomas and tell authorities about Anne Marie's disappearance.
Your screw-ups are driving me crazy.
The solid bonds between brothers began to strain, but Thomas managed to keep everyone in line.
See you later. Bye.
Under oath, Louis denied that he had ordered the dumpsters emptied. Undaunted, investigators continued to pursue their best lead.
So we traced that dumpster. We went to the hauling company, and we found out exactly when the dumpster had been removed. We found out the dump that it had been brought to, and we went to that dump site.
In the middle of August, an evidence recovery team arrived at the Delaware landfill. Workers pointed out the area where the dumpsters had been emptied. The recovery team searched for anything that could be traced back to Thomas Capano's home.
We were looking for the carpeting, the love seat, possibly a murder weapon, and also possibly Anne Marie Fahey's body.
For 4 hot, grueling days, FBI agents scoured the landfills. They found nothing. The investigators finally walked away, tired and frustrated. Despite their strong suspicions, they didn't have enough evidence to bring charges. To agents, detectives, and prosecutors, it looked as if Thomas Capano had gotten away with the perfect murder. In August 1996, FBI agents and Delaware authorities continued to pursue evidence against Thomas Capano for the murder of his former mistress, Anne Marie Fahey. She had been missing for 8 weeks and was presumed murdered by her wealthy ex-lover. As FBI agent Eric Alpert explains, investigators had no physical evidence to support their theory.
There were several challenges in this investigation. We had no murder weapon, no true crime scene, no body, and no witnesses who would come forward and give us information as to what had happened.
On September 6th, investigators received the call they were hoping for. The blood plasma Anne Marie had donated a month before her disappearance had been recovered just before it reached its European destination.
Sure.
Agents needed a known sample of Anne Marie's DNA to compare to the unknown sample from the blood spots found in Capano's house. But DNA lab examiner Alan Giusti didn't know if the plasma would be sufficient.
The problem with extracting DNA from plasma is that plasma is the portion of blood that is separated from the blood cells, and the blood cells are what contain the DNA. So when you're working with plasma, you're actually working with a very poor source of DNA.
To his surprise, he found residual red blood cells in the plasma. This enabled Giusti to retrieve a small amount of Anne Marie's DNA. He compared her DNA sequence to the sequence from the unknown source. They matched. There was only a minute chance that the blood spots from Capano's house did not belong to Anne Marie Fahey. Investigators now had the first piece of physical evidence they needed to support their suspicion that Thomas Capano had committed murder. They knew they needed more. Capano's cell phone records revealed that he had called a woman named Debbie McIntyre from Stone Harbor, New Jersey on June 28th, the morning after Anne Marie disappeared. Investigators learned that Debbie McIntyre was yet another one of Capano's mistresses.
We saw that they called each other frequently, but we weren't sure about their relationship. From doing further interviews, we found that Thomas Capano and Debbie McIntyre had been having an affair for approximately 12 years. So at the same time when he was having an affair with Anne Marie Fahey, he was also having an affair with Debbie McIntyre.
Agents also learned that Jerry Capano, the youngest brother, had owned a boat anchored at Stone Harbor. Detective Robert Donovan investigated.
We found out that Jerry Capano had sold this boat locally. Somebody local had purchased it. We were able to track that down and spoke with a gentleman and looked at his boat.
They scoured the boat for traces of Anne Marie, but found nothing. The new boat owner told investigators that Jerry Capano had sold the boat without anchors. They suspected that the anchors were now at the bottom of the ocean, wrapped around Anne Marie's body. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly and his team turned their attention to Jerry Capano.
And so beginning back in November of '96, we put in place this undercover operation with the idea that we would gather incriminating evidence of Jerry's activities and any other information we could gain about his role on June 28th in disposing of the body.
If agents gathered enough evidence to bring federal charges against Jerry, they could pressure him to talk about his brother's role in the murder. For 11 months, undercover agents tracked Jerry's every move. They learned that he frequented bars and nightclubs and used illegal drugs. They also learned that he collected firearms, a federal crime for a known drug user. On the evening of October 9th, 1997, 15 months after the disappearance of Anne Marie Fahey, the FBI, assisted by the ATF, raided Jerry Capano's house. He was caught completely by surprise. A friend with a criminal record stood with him in the garage. If agents found illegal narcotics stored in the same house as Jerry's weapons, they'd have the physical evidence needed to leverage his cooperation. They found a small arsenal of guns stored in the bedroom closet of Jerry's 3-year-old son. Agent Alpert searched the laundry room near the kitchen. He dug through the pockets of Jerry's clothes. Jerry's collection of rifles and handguns wasn't illegal per se, unless they found illicit drugs on the premises. Agent Alpert found them. He recovered cocaine and marijuana. Now investigators had what they needed to charge Jerry Capano with felony firearms violations. They could also levy child endangerment charges. They did neither. Prosecutors would offer immunity if Jerry would testify against his brother Thomas.
We did not believe Jerry had any role in the murder of Anne Marie Fahey. We only believed he had a role in the cover-up, the disposal of evidence. And we also knew he was very loyal to his brother. He almost viewed his brother as a father figure. But at the same time, he had a wife, he had children, he had a pretty good life, a life that he probably wouldn't want to give up to go to jail. And that was the card that we had to play.
I mean, they've come through the entire house.
After the raid, the FBI allowed Jerry Capano to consider all that was at stake.
We need to talk now.
He was forced to choose between his brother and his wife and children. The pressure upon Jerry Capano was enormous. Not only was he one of Thomas Capano's closest allies, he was his brother. Investigators weren't certain if Jerry would crack. Even if he did, they had no way of knowing if he could help them bring the powerful Thomas Capano to justice. A year and a half after the disappearance of Anne Marie Fahey, Jerry Capano asked to see the FBI and U.S. Attorney Colm Conley on November 8, 1997. Federal authorities had threatened Jerry Capano with federal firearm charges if he did not cooperate with their investigation. They suspected Jerry had helped his brother Thomas Capano dispose of Anne Marie's body in the Atlantic Ocean. With legal counsel by his side, Jerry related his involvement in the incident. It began months before Anne Marie's June 28th disappearance.
With you personally.
Early in 1996, his brother Thomas came to him with a problem. Jerry told Agent Eric Alpert that he didn't realize Thomas had lied to him.
Well, in February 1996, Thomas Capano went to his brother Jerry and told him that he was being extorted, that somebody was threatening his children. He asked Jerry to get him some cash to help pay the extortionists. He also asked Jerry for a gun and said that he might need Jerry's help someday with the boat to dispose of the extortionist's body.
Jerry provided Thomas with $8,000 and the gun he asked for. Thomas returned the weapon a month later, telling Jerry the money was enough. He didn't need the gun after all. He heard little else about Thomas's problem until Friday, June 29th, 1996.
I got a call from Tom.
Early in the morning, Jerry stepped out of his house to find his older brother parked at the end of the driveway. Thomas looked upset.
6 o'clock in the morning, Tom. What are you doing here?
Jerry, I need your help. Jerry, I need you to get the boat.
I don't want any part of it.
Jerry knew, as soon as Tom asked to use the boat, that Tom had been involved in the killing of somebody. And Jerry said to Tom, "Did you do it?" And his brother said yes. And Jerry said he didn't want to have any part in getting rid of a body, and he refused to give up the boat. He said he had a wife, he had kids, he had a beautiful home. And Tom played the brother card. Tom said, "I have nobody else to turn to. You're my kid brother. Please help me."
I'll meet you at your house.
About an hour?
And finally, Jerry relented. And Jerry agreed to meet Tom and to go to Stone Harbor and to take the boat out and dispose of the body.
Behind closed doors, they met inside Thomas's garage, where he asked Jerry to help him load a heavy cooler into his truck. He never opened the cooler, but Jerry believed the body of Thomas's extortionist was stuffed inside. Only the carpet remained. Jerry told his brother not to take it on the boat because it probably wouldn't sink. When they arrived at Stone Harbor, New Jersey, they carried the cooler down the dock in plain sight. It was a common cooler used by fishermen at the marina, large enough to carry an ample supply of bait. No one would think twice about two men loading the heavy container onto a boat. The brothers fueled up and headed for the open waters of the Atlantic. Thomas Capano ordered his brother to motor 60 miles offshore, where the water was deep enough to hide the body permanently. no one else would be close enough to see what the brothers were about to do. They heaved the cooler into the sea, but Thomas Capano miscalculated. The makeshift coffin floated. Thomas then ordered Jerry to sink the cooler by firing slugs into it. The cooler still floated. The millionaire lawyer retrieved it and decided to sink the corpse without the cooler. His younger brother wanted no part of it. He moved to the front of the boat while Thomas wrapped the boat's anchors around the body. What Jerry Capano saw next was critical for Detective Robert Donovan.
Jerry turns around when he asks Tom, "Are you done? Are you done?" Tom tells him, "Yeah, I'm done." As Jerry turns around to look at Tom, he sees a calf and a foot sinking down.
On their way back to Stone Harbor, Thomas Capano disassembled the cooler and scattered its parts into the ocean.
And Tom said he needed me to come back to the house, that he had something else that I needed to do with him.
The work wasn't finished.
Wrapped it in anchor chains and threw it over.
His brother needed to dispose of more evidence.
Tom says, "I need your help getting rid of this couch." And Jerry sees a stain on the couch, which would be right about shoulder height, which is a large, he described as a basketball-size blood stain.
Well, then do something. Then do something about it if it bothers you.
Investigators believe the stain was caused by a fatal gunshot to Anne Marie's head. They dumped the couch and the carpet into a trash bin at a construction site managed by their brother Louis. Jerry had nothing more to add. When word got out that Jerry had cooperated with investigators, his brother Louis appeared with his lawyer 2 days later.
Conversations for an official record.
Louis Capano recanted his earlier statement and admitted that he had obeyed Thomas's orders to empty the dumpsters earlier than scheduled. The FBI began 24-hour surveillance on Thomas Capano. They believed the suspected murderer might try to kill his brothers to keep them from testifying. Less than a week later, on November 12, 1997, the surveillance team watched Capano and his brother Joseph loading suitcases into their truck. They were heading towards the airport. Agent Alpert feared Thomas was fleeing jurisdiction.
At that point, I paged Colin Conley, the Assistant United States Attorney who was inside the grand jury room, with a 911 page to come out. I told him of the details and said we need to make a decision on what we're going to do.
Investigators felt they still didn't have enough to charge Thomas Capano with kidnapping and murder, but agreed they had to stop him from fleeing. Alpert ordered his arrest on grounds that Capano had obstructed justice by coercing his brothers to give false testimony. 17 months after her disappearance, the suspected killer of Anne Marie Fahey was finally in custody. Two brothers now stood against one. But investigators still had no body and no murder weapon. On November 12, 1997, the FBI arrested prominent Delaware lawyer Thomas Capano. He was the prime suspect for the murder of Anne Marie Fahey. His younger brother Jerry claimed Thomas had dumped a corpse into the Atlantic Ocean. Jerry pointed investigators to the area off the New Jersey shore, but they never found Anne Marie's body. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly had a daunting task ahead of him.
We didn't have a body, and that's always a problem. There have only been a handful of prosecutions in the country that have been successfully done without a body. And in Delaware, prior to this case, there had only been one case prosecuted without a body, and it had resulted in an acquittal.
The only physical evidence they had against Thomas Capano were 2 specks of Fahey's blood found in his living room. While investigators prepared the difficult prosecution, Special Agent Eric Alpert learned something that could strengthen their case.
We received a phone call from an individual who said that he had found the cooler floating in the ocean around the weekend of July 4th, 1996. And I asked him to further describe the cooler, and he said that the cooler was missing a lid and had a bullet hole in it.
The lead sounded promising.
I'll have somebody there.
The caller read an article about Capano's arrest that reported a cooler was used in the crime. But the story never mentioned that the lid was missing or that a slug had pierced it. Alpert immediately drove the 2 hours to Bay City, New Jersey to check the lead. On the weekend of July 4th, 1996, Ken Chubb was fishing 6 miles off Indian River when he came across a cooler bobbing in the ocean.
It had 2 bullet holes and blood stain, but you know, we were amazed that this was a brand new cooler, but we weren't amazed at the bullet holes or the blood because they shoot shark a lot, and there might have been a shark flopping around in there and they shot it, and that's where the blood came from.
Yes, sir. There certainly is. In fact, there's 2 of them.
Chubb patched the holes, replaced the lid, and used it as his own until the Capano arrest story broke. Agents discovered the barcode on the cooler matched the one Capano purchased with his credit card on April 22nd, 2 months before Anne Marie disappeared.
The cooler was important in this case because it prevented Tom Capano's defense team pretty much from saying that Jerry Capano was lying. It corroborated exactly what Jerry Capano had told us well before he knew we would ever find this cooler.
The cooler was their second piece of physical evidence, and its purchase demonstrated Capano's premeditation. Investigators still had no murder weapon. They searched records at local gun stores for purchases by Capano or by others close to him. They hit pay dirt. Investigators discovered that Capano's mistress, Debbie McIntyre, had purchased a .22 caliber Beretta on May 13th, 1996, 6 weeks before Fahey disappeared. They brought McIntyre in for questioning. She pretended that her relationship with Thomas Capano was more casual than it actually was.
She spent years in jail.
Connolly asked if Capano owned a gun. McIntyre denied it.
I asked her, "Do you own a gun?" And immediately her demeanor changed. She started blushing. She got very nervous. It was clear that she was lying, and she told us this just fantastical story about buying a gun and then throwing it in the garbage can. And we asked her, did anybody know she had bought that gun? And she said, one person, and it was Tom Capano.
Connolly pointed out that if McIntyre supplied the gun to Capano, she had committed a felony. Under the advice of her attorney, McIntyre admitted that Capano had asked her to buy the gun in the first place. The trial began on October 26, 1998. Early on in the proceedings, Capano surprised the prosecution by admitting that he had disposed of Fahey's body as Jerry had testified. He also admitted to asking his brother Louis to empty the dumpsters early. On the witness stand, Capano painted his own version of events on the evening of June 27, 1996. After dinner, he and Anne Marie came back to his place. According to Capano, they had resolved their differences. They were enjoying each other's company when Debbie McIntyre burst into his house.
What are you doing? What is this? Staying here with
What
this
are you
woman.
doing in my house?
I'm gonna...
Angry and despondent, McIntyre threatened suicide. Anne-Marie was killed instantly. Despite his legal training, Capano claimed he didn't call police because he was trying to protect McIntyre and himself. Instead, he retrieved the cooler that he said was to be a gift to his brother.
See if I can refresh your memory.
He decided to use it as a coffin.
This is the official document.
During cross-examination, Connolly pointed out that Capano had prosecuted a similar case in 1976 when he served as Assistant Attorney General for Delaware. In that case, the killer dumped his victim into a creek near Delaware City. At the time, Capano was quoted as saying the killer would have gotten away with his crime if he would have dumped the body into the Atlantic. Capano denied this.
Well, it's all here. Can I submit this, Your Honor?
In the state's version of events, Capano forced Anne-Marie Fahey to return to his house. She was determined to end their affair. Capano would not be jilted. He took out the Beretta that McIntyre bought for him and shot Fahey in cold blood. Then he stuffed her into the cooler. At about 9:45 that same evening, he entered Anne-Marie's apartment with fresh groceries and the new pantsuit she would never wear. He carefully tried to cover his tracks as he had planned for months. On January 17th, 1999, the jury returned with a verdict.
Mr. Foreman, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor, we have.
Please rise.
Based on his brother's testimony, the blood evidence, and the recovered cooler, the once prominent lawyer and millionaire Thomas Capano was found guilty of first-degree murder.
We were able to reaffirm a lot of people's faith in the judicial system here. The system works. I think we accomplished justice here. I have a very good relationship with the Fahey family, and so I think we've not only been able to bring about justice, but we've brought as much comfort as they can have, given the tragedy they had to suffer.
The jury went further, sentencing Capano to the gas chamber. It was the first time in Delaware history that a defendant had been found guilty in a capital crime without a body or a murder weapon. Capano now waits on death row pending appeals. A series of crimes in a small farming community left people reeling in shock and fear. As the hunt for the suspects expanded, they turned to the FBI for help. They traveled over 1,000 miles to find the deadly perpetrators before more innocent victims crossed their path.
In June of 1997, a crime wave swept Iowa like a tornado. It left a trail of robbery, kidnapping, and murder in its wake. And then it moved on. No one knew where. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI committed its resources to tracking down the suspects. By the time they were identified, They already had a 12-hour lead. The pursuit would take the FBI across 6 states in their efforts to catch the killers.
June 11th, 1997, south central Iowa. The farming region, rich with crops and livestock, began to stir as dawn became morning. Most farmhands had arrived hours earlier to begin their chores. But one who never missed a shift without calling had failed to show that day. Her boss, a nearby farmer, became worried when he called and got no answer. Since she lived alone, he went to check on her. He noticed her pickup truck wasn't there, and the front door was ajar. Inside, he found the lifeless body of his farmhand, Barbara Garber.
Barbara.
Mahaska County Sheriff's Chief Deputy Paul DeGeest responded to the 911 alert.
In 20 years of law enforcement, I've been involved with about 5 or 6 homicides. So it's not something that happens a whole lot in Oskaloosa, Iowa, or Mahaska County. When we went into the living room, we observed Barb Garber's body. She was sitting upright, fully clothed in a chair. She was leaning over to the left side, and there was blood coming from her head.
The sheriff called specialists from the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation to process the scene. The middle-aged woman had been shot 4 times at close range while she sat in the chair. Technicians recovered .22 caliber shell casings close to the victim. At her feet, they found her half-eaten breakfast. The absence of defensive wounds on the body indicated the farmhand had put up no struggle, according to Iowa Special Agent Michael Barrier.
The house did not appear to have any forced entry. It looked like someone had just entered the house, either been let in or had gotten in without having to break in. The residence had a lived-in look but was not ransacked, and there was nothing obviously taken from the residence other than her vehicle was missing from the driveway.
Green pickup truck.
The farmer described the victim's vehicle as a late-model dark green pickup truck.
And that was her personal truck? Yes.
Detectives issued a be on the lookout for the missing truck to all law enforcement in the area.
Blue vehicle, a station wagon.
As you were coming down this road?
Yeah, coming along this road here.
Investigators spoke to her closest neighbor, who lived a quarter-mile down the road. She had noticed something earlier that day when she was on her way to work in the pre-dawn hours.
All the way down there.
She saw an unfamiliar blue hatchback or station wagon backing out of Mrs. Garber's driveway. But she didn't see who was inside, and she didn't get the license plate.
This vehicle was described as a older, not in very good shape, station wagon type vehicle, blue in color. The vehicle was not a vehicle that had been seen at the Garber residence before and was not really associated with the Garber residence, and so we felt that it may be and probably was a suspect vehicle.
See anything else, please?
As police were talking to the neighbor, an alert came across the police radio.
What you got? Okay, I'll be en route.
A bank 5 miles away in the hamlet of Gibson had just been robbed. Deputies from 2 counties responded. Because deposits are insured by the federal government, the FBI was called in.
Yes.
The closest field office was 77 miles away in Cedar Rapids.
2 males, armed. Okay. All right, we'll be heading right there.
Larry, we got a bank robbery at Gibson. Okay.
All right.
FBI Special Agent Scott French was assigned the case.
Anything else? What are they armed with? All right, bye.
The small savings bank in Gibson had just opened for business for the first time that day to the town's population of 70.
Down south here. Right there. It has one paved road to the community of Gibson. The rest of the area is surrounded by farmland with a few gravel roads leading away from the community.
It would take Agent French over an hour to get there. Sheriff's deputies arrived first to secure the crime scene and take witness statements. Bank employees told investigators that the robbery had occurred at about 10 a.m. They had no customers at the time, and there was no guard on duty. Only a teller and the manager were inside when the robbery took place.
All right, get your hands up!
Two armed robbers wearing dark ski masks, gloves, and brown coveralls burst into the bank. One held a shotgun while the other carried a handgun.
Pick that money up, come on.
The robbers scooped stacks of cash and banknotes into plastic trash bags.
Come on, hurry up! Let's go! No, up against the wall, now, go!
They had gotten away with $65,000 in cash.
Moving.
Though they wore masks, bank employees believed both men were white males.
The Gibson Savings Bank did not have any security system. That is, no video cameras, no film to have recorded the robbery. This makes it difficult for investigators to have some evidence other than witness statements.
Investigators found only one person who had seen anything, a 10-year-old girl.
If you had to guess, what kind of car would you say it is?
She told agents that she'd been riding her bike across the street when the robbery occurred. Two men in ski masks holding bags had jumped out of a gray car and had run into the bank. She rode away before the men came out. The girl was either too young or too scared to get the license plate. Police put out an all-points bulletin alerting units to be on the lookout for a gray sedan as a possible getaway vehicle.
I felt the robbers in this particular case were from the immediate area. First of all, the Gibson Bank is a very isolated location. Second of all, both individuals were wearing coveralls, which are somewhat indigenous to the working people in these communities.
Car 32, car 32.
Uniform 10-4, I got it.
The deputy on his way to the robbery scene headed for likely routes the bandits would have used to escape.
Central, I'm going to check this out. We have a car matching the description.
2.5 miles from the bank, he noticed a gray sedan, apparently abandoned in the middle of a farm field. No one was in sight. He checked the car and radioed in the license plate number. It was registered to a teenager by the name of Island Schultz, who lived nearby.
He thought it was extremely unusual that this vehicle would be sitting where it was. And knowing that they were only just a couple of miles away, he drove to their house.
Iowa communities are tight-knit, and the officer happened to know the Schultz family. At the teenager's home, he got no response. The deputy found the front door unlocked.
Island?
Inside, he discovered 18-year-old Island Schultz lying on the floor, shot to death. He radioed for assistance. Mahaska County Chief Deputy Paul DeGeest felt strongly that this second homicide was likely related to both the first murder and the bank heist.
We're relatively sure in our own minds that these were all connected. They were in a 5-mile radius of each other. And again, that's just not something you see a lot of in rural Iowa, where you would have 2 bodies and a bank robbery all within a matter of 2 hours.
The recent high school graduate had been shot twice in the head from close range. An audio cassette and 2 .22 caliber shell casings, the same caliber found at the first murder scene, were recovered close to her body. Like the earlier homicide, investigators found no indication of forced entry and no defensive wounds on the young girl. Iowa Special Agent Michael Barrier discovered another important connection to the first murder victim, Barb Garber.
A neighborhood canvass in the area of the Schultz residence gave us information that a green pickup truck, newer, in good shape, was seen parked in the Schultz driveway at about 9:30 a.m. that morning. That's interesting to us because Barb Garber's pickup is a newer, dark green Dodge pickup truck. And so we believe that after her truck was stolen from her residence, that it ended up at the Schultz residence. And that tied the 2 homicides together.
Both bodies were sent to the county medical examiner for autopsy. Analysis of the bullets confirmed what investigators had suspected. Each victim had been killed with the same weapon, a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. The FBI and local investigators assembled a command center in the Mahaska County Sheriff's Office. They set up a hotline and contacted the media with a description of the farmhand's late model dark green pickup truck.
We occupied a large debriefing room, which acted as a command post. We began to collate leads that were coming in from all parts of the community. There was also significant media attention at this point, which increased the volume of phone calls that were coming in.
Deputies chased down dozens of leads. One was from a teenager who had seen a green truck that fit the description of the farmhand's pickup. He was in the town of Oskaloosa in the late morning when he noticed the truck drive past with 2 men inside. The witness didn't see their faces and he didn't get the license plate. It wasn't much to go on since that particular truck was so common in the area.
We received dozens upon dozens of sightings, most of which turned out to be absolutely nothing. It was just a green 1997 pickup. And everybody that was driving one at some point in time that day in the Mahaska County area was stopped.
Everyone except the driver of the murder victim's truck. Investigators fanned out to search the various small towns in Mahaska County for more promising witnesses. They found one who said he noticed something at around 10:30 or 11 on the morning of the crime spree. He saw a dark green pickup truck near the town of Oskaloosa. The witness identified the driver as a local man whom he'd never seen in that truck before. He claimed there was a passenger inside, but the truck pulled away before he could see who it was.
The individual who reported it recognized the driver of that truck as being Jamie McMahon, a person that he knew, and knew well enough to have recognized him and was positive that it was Jamie McMahon. He also said that there was a second individual in the truck, but he could not get a close enough look to tell whether it was even a man or a woman, just that there was a second person in the truck.
Hey guys, what I want to do is, Don, I want you to take background on Jamie.
At the end of the first day, investigators now had the name and face of a possible suspect in the 2 killings and bank robbery. 22-year-old local Jamie McMahon. Agents and detectives hoped they could catch up with him and his unidentified accomplice. before any more lives were lost. On June 12, 1997, the day after 2 Iowa residents were killed and a bank was robbed, the FBI and local authorities had the name of a possible suspect, 22-year-old Jamie McMahon. McMahon was last seen driving a green pickup that fit the description of the missing vehicle owned by one of the murdered women. Investigators believe that an unidentified passenger traveling with him may be an accomplice. Special Agent Michael Barrier of the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation learned that Jamie McMahon's last known address was at his parents' home in Oskaloosa, Iowa. His parents were concerned to hear from Agent Barrier because they hadn't seen their son since the crimes had occurred.
When we spoke to friends and family about Jamie McMahon, we found that he had been a good kid, hard worker, but that in the past few months prior to these crimes, his personality had changed somewhat, that he began to lose weight, that he had stopped working, and that it just appeared that he was having problems.
You mind if I
Investigators arrived at McMahon's home to search the house and find out more from his parents.
This won't take long. We provide help.
Over the past several weeks, McMahon had been spending a lot of time with his 18-year-old stepbrother, Christopher Kaufman. Kaufman lived close by, but the two had different sets of friends and normally didn't see each other much. Lately, they'd been inseparable. Now, both were missing.
These are good.
Because the bank had been robbed by 2 individuals, and because the witness had seen McMahon driving a truck with a second individual, we just had to assume that Chris Kaufman was the second person with Jamie McMahon.
Detectives interviewed McMahon's friends who remembered seeing him with Christopher Kaufman late on the night before the crimes, driving an old blue station wagon. One friend had lent McMahon the car for the past few months, since the suspect couldn't afford one, according to Mahaska County Sheriff's Chief Deputy Paul DeGeest.
This vehicle was a blue station wagon, which would appear to be a hatchback type vehicle if you just drove past the back of it. This would also tie in with the vehicle that the neighbor seen in Barb Garber's driveway earlier that morning.
Investigators searched the car, but found no evidence that physically connected McMahon or Kaufman to Barbara Garber's murder.
Any unusual behavior?
McMahon's friends mentioned that he had always wanted a dark green pickup like the victims, but the sticker price was out of his range.
Jamie had an infatuation with this particular type of vehicle. Earlier that year, he had one on order that fit the same as what Barb Garber's was, and did not have the money to pay for it, so he canceled the order.
His friends added that the day before the murder, McMahon had stopped by with Kaufman to borrow something else. A .22 caliber semi-automatic handgun that he claimed he was going to use to shoot stray cats. The same type of gun was used in both murders.
Card.
Investigators asked his friends to call immediately if the suspect contacted them for any reason. Authorities learned from several other friends that the suspected murderer had recently been abusing the drug methamphetamine. FBI Special Agent Scott French was concerned about McMahon's mental state, since the illegal drug is an addictive stimulant.
Abusers of methamphetamine suffer a variety of side effects, one of which is they can be awake for several days. Second is they have loss of appetite. But of a greater concern to law enforcement is they have significantly clouded judgment. They become increasingly paranoid, and they may be easily agitated.
A widespread manhunt was launched for the stepbrothers in the dark green pickup truck that was still missing.
5:30, the neighborhood canvas revealed that a small blue car was seen at the Garber residence.
Agents and police also notified additional law enforcement agencies and media outlets throughout the Midwest. warrants for murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution were issued for McMahon and Kaufman.
Initially, we felt that they had left the state, and we could only speculate as to where. Most of investigators there felt very strongly that they were probably headed for Mexico.
Investigators revisited the homes of the pair's friends and family, figuring they would try to contact them.
We're going to put a recording device into the phone.
McMahon's ex-girlfriend gave the FBI permission to install a phone tap and recorder.
Okay. Figure out where he's at and what's
If
going on.
McMahon called,
Okay.
agents would be ready to trace his location. As the manhunt for McMahon and Kaufman continued, a call came into the task force office. Two sets of local parents reported that their teenage daughters were missing. The high school girls, 16 and 17, had not been home since the previous evening. They were best friends and were always together. With two killers on the loose, the parents feared for the girls' lives. Investigators discovered that McMahon and Kaufman had been partying with several girls at a motel in Oskaloosa the night before the crime spree.
Okay, thanks.
At the motel, a clerk told investigators the girls had stayed overnight and were still in the room on the morning of the crimes.
Yeah, those are the girls. Those are the girls, yeah. Those are the ones.
The employee saw McMahon and Kaufman with a green truck later on that same day. She said the two girls left with the stepbrothers.
Yeah.
Investigators issued another nationwide bulletin that the fugitives McMahon and Kaufman were last seen in Iowa traveling with two teenage girls.
We were concerned for the safety of the girls. I believed at the time that if Jamie McMahon was willing to kill someone he knew, that the girls may be in danger.
Investigators responded to a promising tip that came into the hotline. McMahon and Kaufman had been spotted at a trailer several miles away from their family home. Investigators had no way of knowing if they were still armed, high on methamphetamine, or if the teenage girls were still with them.
Not wanting to take any chances and not knowing their mental state, we had the FBI SWAT team come in. Basically, we surrounded the cabin and came in from several different directions.
Heavily armed agents hoped for the best, but were prepared for the worst. Officers yelled for McMahon and Kaufman to come out. There was no reply. The police team stormed in, ready to use deadly force. In June of 1997, the FBI and Iowa investigators stormed a trailer in a remote field on the second day of a nationwide manhunt for 22-year-old Jamie McMahon and his 18-year-old stepbrother, Chris Kaufman. The pair were suspected in 2 murders and robbing $65,000 from a bank. 2 missing teenage girls were believed to be with them.
Clear, looking back here.
Investigators found no trace of the fugitives or the girls. Sightings of the stepbrothers in the stolen green pickup were reported from as far south as Texas to as far north as Minnesota. With $65,000 in cash and a 12-hour lead, Iowa Special Agent Michael Berria realized the pair could be anywhere by now.
We were unable to really come up with any place that they may go. We had information that they might have gone to Minnesota. We also had information that they may have friends or relatives in Florida. But we didn't really have any solid direction of travel where they went.
After 7 days of searching, the FBI got the call they'd been hoping for.
Yeah, they're looking all over the place for you.
Agents were ready with a phone tap when Jamie McMahon called his ex-girlfriend. During the call, McMahon asked if authorities had any idea who killed Mrs. Garber and Eileen Schultz.
He was fishing for information. He was trying to see what we knew and whether we even knew that they were suspects in the case. And she just told him, you know, what did you do and why are they looking for you? And he became aware quite quickly that he was a suspect and that we did know that they were involved. And he hung up.
The agent called his supervisor at the Mahaska County Command Center. FBI Special Agent Scott French learned McMahon had been on the phone long enough to trace his call.
After we received the phone call from McMahon, I began the process of trying to track down the number from where he called. At some point, we reached a snag with a phone company outside the area, wherein they could not determine or provide the number until the following day.
Agents learned that the suspected killer had called from a hotel in Kissimmee, Florida. The employee recognized photos of the two fugitives and confirmed the two teenage girls were with them.
Are they in this hotel? Are they registered here? Are they in the hotel at this time? Please check. No, they checked out.
But they had all just left.
When did they leave? Yeah, damn it.
The phone company's delay had given McMahon and Kaufman just enough time to stay ahead of law enforcement.
McMahon and Kaufman are gone. We missed them.
So they know we're looking for them now.
They know we're looking for them.
Good.
Agents were concerned that McMahon and Kaufman would be more difficult to find now, since they knew the FBI were on their trail.
All right, well, thanks, and I'll get back on this.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Though authorities had missed McMahon and Kaufman in Florida, the two teenage girls who had been traveling with the fugitives returned home safely to their parents.
Parents, take a seat, get some coffee.
Investigators questioned the girls about the time they spent with McMahon and Kaufman. The teenagers confirmed that they had stayed with the young men at the Oskaloosa Motel on the night prior to the crimes. The next morning, McMahon and Kaufman came by in a green pickup with a lot of cash. McMahon, the eldest of the group at 22, offered them a free trip to Florida. The impressionable teenage girls agreed to go with the stepbrothers and didn't ask a lot of questions.
The girls told us that they weren't aware that there'd been a homicide, and they weren't really aware that there'd been a bank robbery as such, but they were aware that something had happened to allow McMahon and Kaufman to have so much money.
The girls told investigators that on their way out of town, they stopped by the Des Moines River. One of the stepbrothers threw a duffel bag into the water, but he never told them what was inside. After that, the four of them drove south toward Florida.
For the first week of this trip with McMahon and Kaufman, the girls treated it like it was a vacation. They were having a good time. They were eating out. They were going to amusement parks.
One of their first stops was in Branson, Missouri. There, the four entertained themselves on carnival rides. The girls said they took photos along the way.
They had with them a couple of Instamatic cameras, and we took those cameras and had the film developed, and we had photographs of McMahon and Kaufman, and one picture in particular is of Chris Kaufman sitting in Barb Garber's pickup truck.
After their trip to Disney World, the girls said that McMahon and Kaufman finally confessed to them about the murders and the bank robbery. Kaufman had dyed his hair blonde to disguise himself. High on methamphetamine, the armed men also told the girls they wouldn't mind killing them as well. The girls were frightened and told the fugitives they wanted to return home.
All right, look, here.
McMahon gave them money for a taxi and train fare
Should be
back
enough
to
here to get y'all
Iowa.
back home.
They told investigators they had no idea where the stepbrothers were headed.
Well, they didn't say where they were going. They just gave us money and we left.
Investigators concluded the girls were not involved since they remained at the Oskaloosa motel when the crimes had occurred. They released the teenagers into their parents' custody without filing charges. On the Des Moines River, an off-duty Iowa trooper happened to come across a bag in the water. He opened it to find a pair of black ski masks and brown coveralls. The officer also found a wallet with a driver's license. He contacted police and gave them the evidence. The wallet and driver's license belonged to the murdered Island Schultz. The clothing matched what the robbers were wearing when they made off with $65,000 in cash from an Iowa bank. Jamie McMahon and Christopher Kaufman remained the prime suspects, and they were still out there, armed and strung out. On June 30th, 1997, 19 days after the search for McMahon and Kaufman began, a call came into the Escambia County Sheriff's Department in Florida. A motorist in Pensacola wanted to talk to police.
Everybody involved in this that you can, okay?
He told them he was driving on a nearby highway when he noticed a green pickup. The night before, he had seen a story about the manhunt for McMahon and Kaufman on television. The truck seemed to fit the description of the fugitive's vehicle. The motorist pulled alongside to get a closer look. He thought the driver looked exactly like the man featured on the show. The truck also had Iowa tags. The motorist pulled off and phoned police.
South, east, and west of the
The
area.
Escambia County Sheriff's Department realized the motorist's description of the truck matched the one Iowa authorities were looking for.
Compass right there.
Iowa authorities wanted to be sure this wasn't just another false lead. It seemed promising since the suspected murderers were last seen in Florida.
Got on him?
They confirmed the license number and sent photos of the stepbrothers to the sheriffs in Pensacola.
That's the same guy I'm thinking.
Iowa investigators alerted them to use caution since the fugitive pair were considered armed and dangerous. An urgent be on the lookout was issued for the green truck in the Pensacola area. Deputies searched local roads, shopping centers, and motel parking lots for any sign of the fugitives or the stolen green pickup truck. In the parking lot of a local motel, 2 officers spotted a green pickup truck. Motel residents usually park close to their room entrance, but this vehicle was obscured near the back behind a fence. Its Iowa license plate and description checked out. It was the murder victim's stolen truck from Iowa. Authorities had no time to lose if they hoped to bring in the fugitives before they eluded them once again. At a Pensacola, Florida motel, authorities had finally located the stolen pickup truck driven by Jamie McMahon and Christopher Kaufman, stepbrothers suspected of 2 murders and a bank robbery in Iowa. Escambia County deputies needed to confirm if the armed fugitives were staying there.
I didn't know if you'd seen these gentlemen today, people, man.
Yes.
The motel clerk recognized the photos of McMahon and Kaufman, but she added that there was a 3rd man in their room. She gave deputies the room number.
Possibly a hostage situation.
Police told her the motel had to be evacuated.
Yes, no problem.
Okay, I'll go with you.
Fearing that the stepbrothers had possibly taken a hostage, deputies called in a hostage negotiating team.
We know they've killed 2 already.
The Escambia County Sheriff Sergeant Jerry Cox was in charge.
We want to establish a command post in this area. That's where we're going. We knew they were armed. We knew that they were murder suspects. We knew they were bank robbers. They were seriously violent criminal individuals. So we got the call out. Our SWAT team and crisis negotiators got the call out, and we responded to the motel.
The motel was evacuated. The hostage negotiating team set up an emergency center nearby. SWAT teams took up positions near McMahon and Kaufman's room. Snipers set up on a nearby roof. No one knew the situation with the third man or his relationship with the stepbrothers. They had no way of knowing if they were all still inside. The negotiator secured the line and attempted to get them on the phone.
Okay, we got the line.
From the man's tone of voice, the negotiator believed he was likely a hostage.
When I made contact with the room, the first individual that I talked to was the hostage himself. He gave me a false name, and I began to try to talk to him a little bit, knowing that was not the correct name, of course, and try to find out what his situation was, what his physical condition was, and what the situation was in the room.
The man said he had just met the fugitives hitchhiking and stayed with them to party for a while. The stepbrothers had been awake for almost 4 days, high on meth, and now they were finally crashing.
There's no way. They'll shoot.
The man had since become aware they were murder suspects and that they were still armed.
He was absolutely frightened out of his mind. He did not know what to do, and he knew that they were willing to take life. They had made statements to him that they would not be taken alive, and therefore he was afraid to make any moves because of what they might do to him.
Bobby?
The negotiator tried to convince him to leave the room, that the rescue team would be at the door when he emerged. While the man considered what to do, McMahon woke up.
Yeah, one of them's getting up. But they're, it's cops, man. You guys gotta let me out of here. What?
One of my major concerns was the fact that they were known drug users and had been partying for a number of days. When people are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, when it comes to negotiations, one of the things you have to be aware of is how those chemicals can alter a person's personality and alter their reactions. They might be extremely aggressive.
Due to their 3-week drug binge, it became clear to the negotiator that the fugitives were not thinking clearly, if at all.
What are you talking to the cops for? Calm down, man. Whoa, calm down. Here.
His first concern was to get the third man out safely without more bloodshed. Authorities were all too aware that the situation could turn violent quickly.
Paramount in my mind was the fact that if they killed 2 already, and both those murders, based on my information, were cold-blooded, calculated murders with no thought given whatsoever to the consequences, that they could easily do that again.
Hold on. Let's shoot everybody. Calm down. Just sit down. Calm down, man. Just hold on. No, man. Put that away. Put that away, man.
Who is this?
Chill. Calm down, man. Just hold on.
Sharpshooters stood at the ready. The negotiator tried to convince them to let the man out of the room before someone else was killed.
Shouldn't have done that, man.
What, man? What do you want? He's not us.
There's no, I'm out. No way, man.
Just gonna walk out?
There's no way.
All right, fine. You don't mean nothing crap to us.
Let the hostage go.
Man, Chris, let him go, man.
After 2 hours, the armed men finally allowed him to leave unharmed.
Here, put your hands on top of your head. Come towards me. Come towards me. Come towards me.
SWAT members spirited the hostage out of the line of fire to where the negotiators continued to work. The hostage said he met the fugitives in New Orleans and had been with them for several days. He said they had a lot of drugs and a lot of cash in the room.
Somebody a couple days.
They only had one handgun as far as he knew.
I guess.
With 2 armed fugitives still barricaded in the motel room, a peaceful resolution did not seem likely. In June of 1997, hostage negotiators and a SWAT team surrounded a Pensacola, Florida motel where 2 armed fugitives wanted for 2 murders and a bank heist in Iowa remained barricaded inside their room, strung out on drugs. Escambia County Sheriff Sergeant Jerry Cox was the lead negotiator.
It's the most difficult segment of the negotiations for me, was to try to overcome the emotional state that they were in as a result of their drug use, their prolonged activity of being awake for so long, and to try to direct them in a peaceful resolution.
He spoke to 18-year-old Christopher Kaufman for some time.
This is Chris. We're gonna kill everybody.
The young fugitive was aware that he was surrounded by police. Sergeant Cox tried to convince him to do the sensible thing and come out unarmed.
But one of the things I was able to learn from Kaufman was that he was tired, that he was just too physically and mentally exhausted to be making an awful lot of decisions.
Worn out, Kaufman passed the phone to his 22-year-old stepbrother, Jamie McMahon.
Hello? What?
The negotiator noticed that McMahon seemed more lucid, more mature than his younger brother. He used it as a hook to separate the two.
So I told him, I said, it's obvious to me that you're the one who's running the show in there. I need you to take charge and do something for me. And he said, what is that? And I said, well, what I need you to do is I need you to take care of your brother. I need you to get him out of there.
Look, just go.
The strategy worked.
Man, just go. I started this. Let me finish.
Movement, red one, white male.
Chris, man, I just want you to go.
McMahon didn't want his brother to suffer whatever
look at me, man.
consequences
You just gotta
McMahon
go.
was going to face by staying in the room.
Go.
SWAT members secured Christopher Kaufman. Now, only his stepbrother remained. McMahon teetered between indecision and despair. He knew his options were limited. The 22-year-old began to weigh life in prison versus suicide.
I heard what sounded to me like a weapon being charged. It was an automatic pistol that he had in there, so it sounded like somebody had slid the slide back and ejected a shell into the chamber, arming the weapon for firing. Gave me some concern. I passed that information on to our commanders and our SWAT team.
McMahon's judgment was clouded.
You there?
He didn't want to spend the rest of his life behind bars.
No, man.
Confused and desperate, he looked to the negotiator for guidance.
And the thing that seemed to work the most was constantly reminding him that as long as he was alive, he had some hope. He had a chance. Once he was dead, there was no chance. And that in Iowa, there was no death penalty. He had an awful lot of years ahead of him to figure this out.
McMahon relented to the negotiator's insight. 4 hours after it had begun, the last fugitive walked out of the room, unarmed as instructed. The negotiator was able to defuse the situation without death or injury. Agents secured and searched the motel room. They recovered $29,000 in cash of the $65,000 that was stolen. They also found the .22 semi-automatic handgun. On every table rested empty beer bottles, marijuana, and powdered methamphetamine. Ballistics tests later confirmed that .22 was the weapon used to kill the 2 women in Iowa. Authorities questioned the pair separately.
I understand from your brother that you committed both of the murders.
No. One of them.
Kaufman told investigators it was his stepbrother's idea to rob the bank. To pull off the heist, they needed a car. McMahon already had his eye on the first victim's pickup truck, the truck he initially wanted to use as the getaway vehicle.
I think I may have left it at a different friend's house. You mind if I use your phone real quick?
Mrs. Garber knew McMahon and allowed the brothers into her house.
Man, just put the phone right back down, please. Yeah, please.
Look, I've got money in the house. You don't
Shut up,
need
man.
to, you don't
Just sit
need
down
to.
right there. Just sit down.
Just sit down!
You don't
Once
need to.
inside,
Just do
Kaufman
it.
claimed his stepbrother egged him on to kill her.
Just do it!
All right, do it.
He wanted Mrs. Garber dead so she wouldn't report the vehicle missing. Kaufman said he shot Barbara Garber twice, then again to make sure she was dead. Since McMahon loved her truck so much, he wanted to keep it and steal a different vehicle to use in the robbery. McMahon decided to try another friend of his, Island Schultz.
Hey. You're my brother Chris, right? Hey, we're completely out of gas, so can we borrow some money?
Sure, no problem. Come on in. I got some.
Like Mrs. Garber, their second victim let McMahon in along with Kaufman.
Little road
The
trip
pair
or
claimed they
something?
needed money for gas.
Yeah, I think I
She
have
lent them
some.
$5.
Is that good
That's
enough
fine.
now?
For now. Yeah, yeah.
As she bent over to put a music tape on,
Hey, I got a
Kaufman
pretty
told
cool
investigators
Wanna take a look?
his stepbrother shot her in the back of the head. To make sure she was dead, McMahon shot her again between the eyes. The stepbrothers took Schultz's car keys and wallet. Over the next 3 weeks, the pair spent $36,000 on hotels, prostitutes, and drugs before they were apprehended in Pensacola, Florida. Though Iowa had no death penalty, Jamie McMahon, 22, and Christopher Kaufman, 18, faced the federal death penalty for 2 carjackings resulting in death. They faced another federal charge for bank robbery. To avoid a death sentence, the stepbrothers pled guilty to all federal and state charges. Their convictions left many unanswered questions for the people of Iowa and Mahaska County Chief Deputy Paul DeGeest.
These two guys were as common as any two boys next door. I can't explain why they would go to this extent to get a vehicle and to go on vacation or just to impress a couple of girls. It's just crazy. You'd never guess that they would be the two type of individuals to do that, knowing their parents, knowing their backgrounds. I mean, it just didn't make sense.
Jamie McMahon serves the rest of his life in Leavenworth, Kansas. Christopher Kaufman serves his time in solitary confinement in the tough Supermax federal prison in Florence, Colorado.